Hello and welcome to DJ Force 10 in Conversation podcast, episode 124. My special guest on this episode is Phil. He is from the band Khemmis. They've just released an EP. It's like a half studio, half live EP called Doomed Heavy Metal. And it's very good. It's on Nuclear Blast. You can also pick it up here in England on Nuclear Blast across the digital formats. But if you want the physical format, which is I'm going to order, Iron Bonehead Distribution. They have the vinyl. It's about €18, which I'm about to order myself any moment now. Just thought I'd record this while I was doing it, just to sort of like, you know, show how much I do like this band. But yeah, this is the kind of like the first time I found out about this band and stuff. They've been around for a while, don't get me wrong. There are some bands that kind of passed me by, and this was one of them, and I really enjoyed their sound. They were due to play Desert Fest in the UK in Camden, but unfortunately with everything going on, it's been cancelled. But hopefully once it sort of like everything gets back to normal, at some point whenever they can get their stuff over here, I'll be going to see them because I really enjoyed their sound. The production on the EP is really good as well, especially on the live tracks, really surprised me. But go check it out. It's called Doomed Heavy Metal. It's got a fantastic cover of Ronnie James Dio, which we do talk about in the interview itself, so I won't spoil it. But this one's quite a nice, chunky interview. I had a great time chatting with Phil. It was great. He's all the way over in the States as well, so it was kind of nice to sort of catch up with someone over there and see how they're doing. But yeah, no, we kind of cover a lot of stuff in this one, so I hope you guys enjoy it. In the meanwhile, I'm just wanting to thank you guys again. I know I do this every episode, but I really am appreciating everyone who's downloading it, everyone who's streaming it, everyone who's listening, leaving comments, reposting links and stuff like that for me. Not just the bands, but their fans as well, which is absolutely brilliant. I love it. If you get a chance, please leave a rating on whatever format you get your podcast from. That would be great as well, just to sort of help elevate these bands up a little bit, get some more listeners to them and stuff like that, which is all cool. We got loads coming up again this week. I think I mentioned most of them yesterday, but I'm always booking interviews and stuff. I've got a couple more booked for this week, and then going into next week as well. So we're keeping busy between that, work and like looking after my family and everything. It's all good. I actually feel good this morning. Sort of like past few days and stuff, I felt a bit weird, or past few weeks I should say, I felt a bit weird, but this morning I've kind of like, I think I've just sort of past the sort of like threshold of stuff, and now just sort of cracking on really. And without further ado, I'm going to hand you over to myself and Phil for the interview. I hope you guys enjoy it. Be well. I'd like to welcome Phil to the show this week. He is from the band Khemmis. Welcome, Phil.
Hey, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you doing today, man?
Great. Like pretty early morning over here, but I have to work early anyway, so I'm just kind of taking a little break from that.
Cool.
And, excited. We just got like a foot of snow last night somehow.
Oh, really?
It was like 60 degrees and sunny yesterday, and woke up this morning. Wasn't expecting that at all, and just winter wonderland now.
Magnificent. You're over in Colorado, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay. So yeah.
Denver area.
Yeah. Normally gets a little chilly over that way, doesn't it? But yeah, especially not expecting it. That's fun. So you've got to go to work after this, or have you?
I'm just working from home
while
this whole, shit show's going on. So, it's not a problem.
Okay, good. I was just making sure, because I'd like to say, the whole shit show that is going on, that we are sort of stuck in a lockdown. I was just curious about what you sort of were doing around that sort of thing as well.
Yeah, I mean, life is kind of going on as normal, aside from, band related stuff.
Yeah.
Like I work for the federal government, so I'm still working, and I have a lot of stability around that, but some of my bandmates don't. And we had to postpone our European tour that would be happening like next week.
Yes.
Because of this, and also a couple of shows in the States. So, and we'll see what happens. I mean, I don't think anybody knows really exactly when things will get back to normal. So,
no.
yeah, we're kind of, we're a little anxious about that because we have a lot of money tied up in flights and stuff like that. You can't just get money back from the airlines right now.
No.
And so we're trying to like sort of put that forward towards future tours that we have planned, but who knows if those will happen.
Yeah.
I don't really depend on the band quite as much for like a steady source of income, but some of my bandmates do, so it's not like a super easy time for them.
No,
but, like I just bought a drum machine online that hopefully is showing up like early next week, so that'll be kind of fun to play with. And I've never had something like that before. It's like a goofy like big 80s one with like all these things all over it and shit. Nice. It looks really fun.
Nice.
And so that'll be kind of fun to like sort of get the band experience a little bit, have something to play along to.
Yeah
Definitely missing getting together with the other guys in Khemmis, and we were full steam ahead on working on a new full-length album, and so it's kind of weird to have it just like derailed right in the middle of the process.
Yeah.
So I've just got like tons of ideas bunching up without like a good outlet for it, because we tend to do a lot of writing together in terms of arranging tracks and stuff. And so feel kind of aimless without like having somebody to bounce ideas off of,
It is a weird time. Like I've done a few of these, and a few bands have sort of managed to rig up online, not so much practicing, but at least like jamming sessions and stuff like that, so they can bounce ideas off each other. But obviously if you're getting that drum machine come through, that's going to be a lot of fun to sort of like get hold of and play with. So
yeah, it's not going to sound, it's going to sound like a fucking Whitney Houston song, like because that's like just how it sounds. But I think it'll be still pretty fun to play along with and come up with like different rhythmic ideas, and then see. I've never written something to I guess sometimes we've kind of written riffs to certain drum ideas that Zach, our drummer, will have, but to come up with like my own sort of drum patterns and then write a riff along to it, it's not really a way I've approached things before. So I'm kind of looking forward to a little change in the creative process.
Well, I look forward to your follow-up disco album. So
yeah, thanks.
Well, let's have a chat about your actual album that is out. Well, as we're recording this, it is out tomorrow. It's called Doomed Heavy Metal. It is a live album.
It's half live and half studio tracks. So it's sort of, there used to be like a bunch of bands that would do cool shit like this, where they would release something that was kind of weird, and it was sort of just like fan service. I'm thinking of like the best example of this is Fandango by ZZ Top. They released this album Fandango that's half live tracks and half studio tracks to sort of like tie people over between albums, and it's like one of my favorite ZZ Top records. So and that's true of everyone in the band, so we were kind of looking to do something similar with this.
Yeah, I was going to say it's a format that that I hadn't seen for a long time as well, and now that you mentioned Fandango, I totally forgot about that album. But that was that's a fantastic.
Go back
one.
And listen to it.
Yeah, no, I will. I will do after this actually. But no, I was just it's a format that I like you said, that it hasn't been done for a while. I've not seen it in this sort of like fashion, where I was about to say that half the tracks on your album were studio as well as live, but So was that the sort of like general feel behind it? Was that the sort of like the sort of love for that sort of like format from, say, the Fandango album? Was that something that really did influence you in releasing this?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think we started off like just wanting to record a couple live shows that we did at the end of 2018. We played back-to-back nights, like as a sort of New Year's thing in Denver, like at the end of 2018, and we had our producer come out, and he mic'd up everything and got stems of each of the parts, each of the instruments and stuff during that live show. And between the two nights, we played basically every song that we have in our catalog across all three studio albums, and so we had a lot of material to choose from, and we decided that this would be a cool way to use some of that, was to put out something that reminded us of that Fandango release. And it also gave us an excuse to share a couple of tracks that people have asked us to put out in like a sort of more real, tangible fashion. Like, we did this song for the Decibel magazine. I don't know if you get that over in Europe, but it's like the biggest U.S. Metal magazine.
Yeah, I'm aware of it. We don't.
Okay.
Yeah, you get it on special order over here.
Okay. Yeah, we did like a track for. They have like a flexi series where they print a song onto like a little plastic disc.
Yeah,
and you can play it on your record player. So one of the tracks is from that, which we hadn't had a chance to release even like digitally before. And then another track from a 7-inch that we did that was a split. And then the new track that we recorded, which is the Dio cover.
Yeah, I was gonna go on to that in a moment, actually, the Dio cover. But I was just going to reflect on a couple of the tracks on it. The production value in the live tracks is really good. I just want to say that. So the producer and you guys obviously played really well, and the producers have done an absolute bang up job. Because there's always a gamble with live stuff, I feel. Because I've heard some, like even some really big bands like have terrible live albums.
Yeah, for sure.
Like
it's I think metal's not necessarily like one of the genres that translates the best live.
Yeah,
you know, like if it's a rock album or like a rock band that's doing a live album, then I think if it's like a little loose and like not quite perfect, it like doesn't. It's not distracting, you know.
Yeah.
And I think that we skirt the line between being like rock and metal enough that like we could have a scrappier live recording and it would be okay. But I think generally our producer Dave Otero's vision for it was to get like as high fidelity of a recording as possible. Like, so we set up for like hours before the live shows, and he had like DI boxes where he could get a feed from like microphones and stuff before it went through the console. For all the instruments and all of our effects boards before it goes into the amp, so that he could take those sounds and isolate them as much as possible. And then it gave him more freedom with how he mixed it when he got back to the studio with it. So yeah, it turned out like very close in quality to the studio stuff that's on the record, which I think is pretty impressive. It's a good testament to his ability to sort of manipulate sound in a way that makes it big in studio, like even when it was a live environment,
Yeah, I mean that was the real thing with it. I was like, because like I said, you can kind of gamble on the live. It kind of especially in the metal thing. I've had experience of it being quite flat. But you guys like have managed to capture what you would capture at a live show. So like if you were actually there, this is what you would hear. Rather than just sort
That's
of like
the idea.
A muted version. But yeah, no, it was really cool. I really enjoyed the track Three Gates, actually. It's one of my favorites on that track, on the album itself. But we'll go on to the Dio cover, actually, if you don't mind, because that opens up the album. You did a cover of Rainbow in the Dark, which is it's quite a track to do from Ronnie James Dio. What was the sort of why that song?
I mean, we all have a lot of love for Dio and what he stood for in terms of like just being like unapologetically yourself in the metal sphere, and being like the personification of like everything that's great about metal. And that song in particular, I think we really wanted to do something that was like an iconic metal track. We didn't want to shy away from the challenge of like, if we were going to be doing a cover, there wasn't any point in doing like some obscure track that people don't know of. For us, like we wanted to do like one of the biggest songs of all time. And so that's kind of why we like gear ourselves more towards trying to do one of like the big singles that he had. And we had been thinking for a long time, since like our very first tour, about whether we thought we could pull off ever doing like a Dio cover. Originally we had thought about, this is probably like in 2014, maybe doing Shame on the Night from the same album, the last track on there, because it has this like big doomy ending and it just seemed more obvious. But when we started talking about doing this and we were kicking around like maybe doing a Metallica song or something like that, we came back to the idea of doing Dio, and instrumentally it's a pretty simple song, so it was relatively easy to put together.
Yeah.
And we wanted to do something different with it. We wanted it to make it seem as much as possible like we could have written that song.
Yeah.
So we redid it with the guitar harmonies in place of the keyboards. It slowed down just a little bit. It's in our tuning, obviously, so it's quite a bit lower.
Yeah.
And then we sort of reimagined the solo section of the song too. Like I came up with this kind of like proto thrash riff.
Yeah.
To play under it instead of just the like same main riff. And I think the part that was always going to be the most difficult was to do the vocals and have it be have any justice for what Dio did.
Yeah.
But I think the idea for me was always, it's not going to be the Dio song. I know I don't sound like him. I just have to like give it everything I have and really try and sell the lyrics as much as possible. And I've always sort of had this approach where for me, I have to really believe in what I'm singing if I'm going to be singing it.
Yeah.
And I came to realize that the lyrics for that song were very similar to something that I would come up with myself, because I often want to tell like a really personal story, but I don't want it to be like autobiographical.
Yeah.
In a way where you can really easily tell what it is I'm talking about. And it's hard to relate to something that like you can tell is just like that person's experience. And I found like I've always just kind of written off Dio's lyrics as being like pure fantasy, like Dungeons and Dragons shit. But like it couldn't be further from the truth when I was really diving into the lyrics, not just for this song, but I became interested in a lot of his other ones too. And you could tell that he was like really expressing a lot of feelings of regret and sadness about how his life hadn't worked out the way that he had meant with the other bands that he'd been in, and that he was suffering with a lot of depression, and that clearly there was some like childhood trauma that he was dealing with too. And all these things are painted in a really beautiful way with the lyrics for Rainbow in the Dark, where it becomes like a positive and sort of euphoric song about all these things. And so I could relate really strongly to the general like feelings of that. And so I did my best to sort of channel it into how we might deliver it in a Khemmis song, even though I wanted to keep as many of like the vocal inflections and stuff that he does in the song that are so iconic, pretty similar to what they were, other than like, a couple things that I really wanted to, sort of do my own version of. But it was a fun challenge, and I think that we pulled it off, at least in terms of doing what we wanted to do with the track, which was, make it a Khemmis song, but also pay tribute to the original. Yeah,
no, you certainly did that. I mean, you as they were saying, you made it your own on that front, because with Dio, like you sort of went into, like there's a lot of people think it's generally like the fantasy, it's the kind of like the power metal side of things, or the sort of like what's the word? Can't remember the word. It'll come back to me soon. But where
it's very like pompous and grandiose.
Yeah, I think that's the word. That was the word I was searching for. I couldn't find it in my vocabulary. But it was but no, the way you've delved into it, and I've done the same with a lot of his stuff, because I went back and I've listened to a lot of Dio stuff, like when he was in Sabbath, and a lot of his solo sort of stuff as well. Just sort of around when people were starting to sort of like wanting to bring him back as a hologram and things like that. Yeah. And but no, it does. It's not just the fantasy side of things. It's not just painting this huge picture of a battle or a knight in shining armor or whatever coming to the rescue. There is a lot of like personal reflection in his music. And I'm not sure many people may realize this or not, but it's great to actually hear you say it, because it's something that I felt for a long time with his music and a few other musicians as well, where you sort of like, where you can dig below the sort of like the costume, if you will, and actually
totally
hear what he's trying to put across, but obviously within a sort of like way he's comfortable doing it.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I enjoyed the cover. I like when I first listened to you guys, I wasn't expecting a cover because I don't tend not to read the bio before I listen to a lot of things, just purely because I want it to hit me. You know, I was like, it started off and I was like, for some reason I recognize this song.
Yeah.
So you certainly made it your own.
The second that like the vocals kick in, you probably know exactly what it is.
Yeah, I think pretty much there.
It's like different enough that like you. Hopefully, at first you just think, "Oh, okay, this is a Khemmis song."
Yeah, no, definitely. And like I said, I enjoyed the rest of the songs on there. Like I said earlier, on Three Gates was great. But you've got A Conversation with Death and Empty Throne is another studio track on there. And then the live ones, you got Bloodletting, Three Gates, and The Bereaved, which are all fantastic songs. And like I said, the production value on that live stuff is amazing. So kudos to you on that.
Thanks.
No worries.
I think in some ways it's kind of cool because, for instance, like The Bereaved was off our first album. We wanted to include one track from each album for the live stuff. And The Bereaved, we recorded it a long time ago in 2014. And we had a really small budget for that release, even though we did it with the same producer we'd been working with. But, like his assistant tracked everything. And so it does sound like noticeably different from our other studio albums, and so it's kind of cool to get to redo it with I think a higher fidelity recording, actually, even if it is live. And like I think I've like grown as a vocalist, and the guitar solos are going to be different too. Like Ben's guitar playing is way more technical than it was on the first album. So like his solo at the end of that song is totally different. So I really like that we got to redo a song from our first record that, we can demonstrate that we've sort of come a long way from. And I almost prefer this live version of that song.
Yeah, I was going to say it's a definite evolution, if you will, of the song. Because I went back and listened to a few of your other bits as well. Sort of where they came from. But no, I was going to say that sort of track, and you can see the way that over time that track has matured as well. With obviously obviously you're saying you prefer the new recording of it as well, and recording aside, that the actual track itself, it has a lot more depth to it than it previously did.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. It's also like probably the most significant single song in our catalog, just because it's kind of it's the track that we had on our EP. It's the only track that we kept for the first full length. So it's sort of the oldest like real song in the Khemmis catalog. Yeah. And it's the track that Dave Otero, the guy that has produced all of our albums, like heard and became interested in us because of. It's the track that sort of like sold us to $20 Spin, who we worked with for our first 3 albums. Yeah. It's really like, and it's meant a lot to me. It was sort of like the first time that I really wrote something that was like really coming from a place where I didn't want to share what it was that I was singing about with the world. Okay. And that it like was sort of the moment where I succumbed to the need to do that. And we've heard a lot of people, mention like how much that song means to them. People like, war veterans saying that it helps them sleep at night and things like that, where I have a really strong personal attachment to the song for all those reasons. So it's really cool to see it, like you said, sort of evolve over time. And and to get to share a new version of that with where we are now with people.
No, that's really good because, like they say, because it was obviously from your first release, and now from you're still working with $20 Spin as well. Is that?
We are for this release, the Doomed Heavy Metal one. They're doing the physical side of it. Okay. It's sort of like we wanted this release to be kind of like the closing of like a trilogy of records that we did with $20 Spin, and sort of to like cleanse the palate before we move on to something new with Nuclear Blast entirely. And so we're kind of in a strange place with this one where, we wanted this really distinct physical representation of it. That it seemed like $20 Spin was going to be better at delivering on the time frame that we had to release it.
Okay.
and because they have better connection with like independent record stores in the United States, and we were going to have this being released for Record Store Day,
okay,
but it got canceled.
Yes.
So that kind of fell through, obviously. But so our intention was for this to be sort of like a independent record store, not exclusive, but like that it was kind of geared around that kind of release.
Yeah.
And it seemed like it made sense to release it on an independent label than in the US for the physical side of things.
Okay.
But Nuclear Blast has much better sort of promotion and distribution and digital abilities. So, we wanted to do that for the worldwide release as well.
Yeah.
So it's kind of the best of both worlds for us.
No, definitely. And obviously you've come to my attention fully with this as well, being through Nuclear Blast. The only time I'd really seen you guys on any sort of promotion that I get was actually for Desert Fest, which I was going to be attending, which was supposed to be in May, I think it was.
Yeah. And I think we were on May 2nd.
Yes.
Before it got canceled.
Yes. Yeah. So, and that's where it kind of like really kind of like came to me on that front. And I've seen $20 Spin being named a few times with a few bands that I've talked to. And no, it's nice to see that you're closing that sort of chapter with a kind of compilation of what they've released already, with the live tracks and obviously these new 3. But it does give you that heading into going, because it is a solid release. And you're getting that worldwide distribution through Nuclear Blast as well. So,
right,
best of
we
both
did kind of we did kind of a similar thing with the last full length album with Desolation. Okay. Nuclear Blast handled both the physical and digital release for all of Europe and like Asia, like the worldwide sort of thing. And $20 Spin did the North American release for it. So it was like a licensing agreement between the two, essentially. Yeah. And then after we released Desolation, it was like a good way to sort of feel out all parties. And it seemed like we actually worked really well with Nuclear Blast, and we really enjoyed working with them. And so we decided to sign with them. So we're signed with them now for the next full length. It'll be all Nuclear Blast. But this is sort of like outside of that contract because it's not a new full length album, even though it is like 40 minutes or whatever. But so it's just kind of like a different sort of release. We wanted to make it clear that it wasn't like, this isn't like our first album for Nuclear Blast. This is like a different thing that is, it's really fan service for us and something that we wanted to do to help close out that chapter with $20 Spin and sort of give thanks to fans that have been with us for the last 5 years.
Yeah, I don't know why I didn't notice that too, because it was your last album was on Nuclear Blast. That's totally my bad.
That's fine.
Research on my part.
No worries.
So I should have had that probably sent to me at some point. And actually, no, 2018. Let's think. No, probably not actually, because I didn't have much coming from them at that point. Yeah, so I may have just got onto the Nuclear Blast like mail outs shortly after that. So
yeah. No worries, dude. I think go back and check out the album if you want.
Oh, I have. I use the like streaming services. I check out all the music on there. That I go back. It gives me that kind of like thing to go back and really check out a lot of bands of like back catalogue and everything. So obviously pending that it's on there. So
right.
Cool. So who did the artwork for your this release? Because it's pretty good. I really like it. Who was the person behind the artwork on that?
Well, for all of our full length albums, we've used the same artist. This guy Sam Turner, who's a Denver-based guy, and so we've gone for sort of like a Frank Frazetta-esque kind of art style for the primary releases, and that's something that we sort of want to continue moving forward. Like we sort of see this as like, if we're Iron Maiden and we're going to have Eddie on the front of every album and like a similar aesthetic, that should be like our thing. And we've been thinking that since the beginning because there's not a lot of bands doing it. But since this was like a release, like I said, that's sort of outside of our kind of full length progression. We thought it would be cool to use a different artist to sort of set it off even more. And so the artist is Cameron Hingjosa. He's a Texas guy. He's friends with Zach, our drummer, who is from from Denton, Texas.
Okay.
And so they're like childhood friends, and basically he had drawn this artwork for us for the shows that we recorded that the live tracks are from.
Yeah.
That was like the show poster for those shows. And we had those two shows. One night was called Doomed, and one night was called Heavy Metal.
Okay.
And we played like our doomier tracks the first night, and our more like rock and heavy metal tracks the second night.
Yeah.
So it was like almost no overlap in the set lists, except for this was on both nights. And so we'd wanted to create this artwork for it that had like a dualist, like a kind of dual representations on it that sort of reflected the two different nights. And it also made perfect sense then for this release because it's split into two parts, right?
Yeah.
Got the studio side and the live side. So again, the artwork fit this aesthetic of like it being two things at the same time, where, you know, half the image is in color and the other half is black and white and grayscale. And, you know, you've got sort of like this vision of death on one side, and you've got this vision of life on the other side with this woman with, you know, like harvesting some grains. And it's also sort of a reflection of like the local landscape here, because we have like some mountains that are visible from Denver in the image. So the whole thing was like really geared around those live shows, but also works as a really good representation of what the album is. So it made perfect sense to just keep the same title, Doomed Heavy Metal. It's also like kind of a statement, right? Like, this is who we are.
Yep.
And then have the artwork that sort of matches that in a cool way.
Yeah.
I really like the art piece too. I had like drawn him a really shitty version of it and sent it to him when we were working on it. And I was like, this is kind of what we were envisioning is, you know, this kind of thing. And then he just like crushed it, made it, you know, obviously way better than I did. That's something that I've always liked being involved in, is that I always work really closely with the artist that's doing our album art.
Cool.
And we'll, you know, pass back and forth sketches and stuff and settle on what it is we want to do. So glad to continue that with, you know, this release too, where it wasn't intended to be an album art cover, but it certainly ended up working out well that way.
No, I really like it. It's kind of made me want to buy the vinyl because I like
good,
like when I have that big scale artwork on a record, you know. So
I think you'll appreciate it if you do invest in the records. All of our records like have really good artwork, I think, and they also like are cohesive as a unit. So if you buy them, and we unfortunately didn't like have the money to do gatefolds for them.
Sorry.
So you can't like open it up. But if you pay attention to the artwork and you sort of flip over the album and you see what the reverse side is, and for all the albums, there's like a story that's being told, and the inserts on them have, you know, different sort of drawings and stuff that go along with the stories on the albums. And so we try and reward people that invest in the physical product with something that, kind of going back to the idea of like how Fandango was a cool release and it's not something people do anymore. We try and give people something that's not dissimilar from like looking through your father's record collection when you were a kid and like staring at the images and figuring out what the stories were that were going on, you know, like in a Molly Hatchet album or whatever. And our hope with the physical releases is that you can do the same thing with our music, that it sort of like it complements what you're hearing, but it's not the same, and that there's a separate appeal to the album art, you know, in its own way too.
No, definitely. That's what I love about, like, because I'm a vinyl head, so I have a lot of like old sort of like rock and metal albums, and it's exactly that. It tells a story, like seeing like the artwork in that size. I mean, CDs were great. You had the little booklet, which is, you kind of get, you know, a same or a similar sort of pattern for it. But the vinyl side of things, because it was so large, it was like owning, it's like owning just like a picture, you know, something you can hang up.
I always like looked at my dad's copy of Yes songs. That it's like a 4-disc, like huge fold out fucking album with this incredible Roger Dean art, and just like staring at it for hours. Or like some of the Allman Brothers ones too had like a similar art aesthetic, and there's like a Dr. John album that I had that like sort of the same thing. And aside from like the obvious like metal ones that are badass, like rock history includes these amazing art pieces that you could just like really lose yourself in. And that's something that I think we've lost the appeal of as more people have focused on the digital side of releases, and that we would like to see carry on, the tradition of as much as we're capable of doing.
Yeah. No, I was, as you mentioned, yes, I had Alan White on my show recently.
Cool.
And it was like an absolute pleasure to speak to him. But it was just like, it was just like we were talking like off recording about artwork and stuff like that, and how their albums have like extensive kind of pieces of art across them, as well as the music being as big as it is as well. So
oh, that's really cool.
Not to name drop who I heard us on the show. But I thought, as you mentioned, yes, it's not. I don't get to talk about Yes too much with people, so it's all good. But I had Jeff Downs as well, the keyboard player, who's in Yes as well now. So, I've had a few sort of like proggy artists on the show, which is quite cool. So, But yeah, cool. So I've got a couple of questions left for you, Phil.
Sure.
If that's all right. These are more sort of centered around yourself and your own influences and whatnot. But they're sort of like, these are my generic kind of like wrap up questions I always ask everyone. So, so what is your? We'll go with the first one because it's usually quite a big one. If you could pinpoint them, what are your 3 albums that have kind of shaped the musician stroke person that you are today?
I think kind of the big like first metal album that I got really into is maybe like Screamin' for Vengeance, the Judas Priest record.
Yeah. Cool.
And then like Masters of Reality, the Black Sabbath album. And I also, the last 2 are kind of like around the same time, I would say, but I also got really into Power Slave and and Electric Wizard Funeral, or what's the fucking album called? The one that has Funeralopolis on it.
Yeah.
Dope Throne.
That's it. Yeah.
I got into those 2 albums like right around the same time also. And even though they're totally different.
Yeah.
I think like really sort of the crux of the band, at least in terms of the metal influences, is like some combination of those 4 things anyways. So I think it's pretty direct how they've related to this. I sort of started playing music in high school with like a really shitty cover band that I formed with like a couple of women that were at my school. And we played like mostly like Judas Priest songs, like the poppier Judas Priest songs and stuff. So like right away I was kind of getting familiar with playing guitar in that fashion. And then I've never been like a real good guitar player, but I recognized when I heard things like, the slower Black Sabbath stuff and like that Electric Wizard album that I am capable of coming up with cool riffs, and that they can be pretty simple and have like a really sort of addictive and heavy quality to them. And then, combining that over time with an interest in like memorable melodies and some more up tempo sort of driving, more rockin' stuff like you'd hear on both that Judas Priest record and the Iron Maiden record. That's sort of somewhere in the intersection of all those things.
You can definitely
Khemmis is.
You can definitely hear those elements within your band, which is really cool. Like if I was to sort of like pinpoint a few of the sort of like bands that I would, if I just when I heard you, I could say maybe, this band, and Sabbath was one of them. It's generally a given. But yeah, the Priest and Iron Maiden side of things, there is that element in your music as well, which is really cool, because they're two of my sort of like favorite bands, along with Motorhead.
Fuck yeah.
Like from the from the sort of British heavy metal side of things. And you could definitely hear that. And
I'm also like a really big fan of, like on the Doom Ear side of things, I really like Paradise Lost.
Oh,
and
nice. Yeah.
They're probably my favorite like Doom band.
Yeah. No, very, very good band.
And then like we also all really like a bunch of black and death metal, but also like kind of proto black and death metal. Like we're all big like Merciful Fate, King Diamond fans. Nice. So some of that works its way into our music too. And then, I really like, for instance, like, some early, like really like At the Gates and the early sort of like doom death stuff, the like, Peaceville stuff, and like Amorphous. I also like some of the like proto death metal, like some of the stuff that Creator was doing that kind of like pushed into that territory, and bands like Massacre. So and we all have different influences, but for me, those are like the metal ones.
Yeah. No,
and then we all have a huge love and background in an appreciation for like Southern rock. So that was a huge influence for us too.
Yeah.
Outside the metal spectrum, prog rock and Southern rock, and just like rock and roll generally are big influences.
Yeah, definitely. They're I'm very much, I'm getting sort of back into my sort of like prog side of things. Like I said, having speaking to these people from these bands, it's really kind of like reopened a love for that music. Whereas like I was going through sort of a mini stage of not putting them on because I knew I'd have to be invested in them, like when I've put them on. And I was just kind of like just wanting background music for a lot of the time. And a lot of that sort of music is very difficult to be background music because of its a complexity and how it occupies my mind.
Sure.
So I can listen to some jazz. That's fine. I can do that while I'm cooking or whatever. That distracts the sort of scatty part of my brain. But if I go for like the full on prog rock, if I'm playing something like just say from Yes, a couple of their track off Relayer. In fact, it just totally goes off on one, and it totally involves me. I can't do anything else while it's on.
I was trying to I usually will play some music or something while I'm working, and I was trying to listen to Lark's Tongues in the Aspic, the King Crimson album.
Yeah.
While I was working the other day, and I was like, it was so fucking hard. Even though that album is pretty atmospheric for one of their records, it was I just couldn't get anything done.
Yeah,
so I get totally it fully.
Yeah. So finally, Phil, what are your hobbies away from music? So when you're not doing anything Khemmis wise, or writing for that or anything else, what are your sort of getaways from that? Yeah,
I mean, I listen to a lot of music. Most of it not metal. I listen to a lot of country western music from classic country western stuff, and rock and some indie rock. I'm really liking the new Strokes record. Cool. And a lot of jazz and stuff like that. But so aside from music stuff, I do a lot of cooking. During this thing, I've been trying to not go to the grocery store as much as possible. So it's been kind of creatively satisfying to make do with what we have. So I've been learning how to make a lot of cool vegan stuff with things that we have around the house. That intended to sort of get into that a while ago, and I hadn't really made the time for it. But so I've been making seitan lots of cool things with that. I've been making like nut cheeses and different kinds of like, weird like substitutes for things that are normally not vegan. So that's been fun. Baking. We're not like vegans, so we've also been making yogurt at home, and so just like a lot of stuff like that. Right now, normally I do like a lot of biking, like bicycling, not like motorcycles.
Okay.
And I do like winter sports like snowboarding and cross country skiing, and I used to skateboard a lot, but I haven't been doing that recently. I don't know. I also like to sometimes like draw and create art in that way too.
Cool.
So got a lot of different things that I like to spend time doing, but I used to make beer a lot too, but I haven't been doing that recently either. Okay. But like our drummer Zach is the head brewer at a brewery in Denver, so I usually have no shortage of like getting to try cool beers without having to make it myself. So
excellent.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, Phil, thank you very much for your time, mate. I really appreciate it. Despite my early technical issues, I'm thankful that you were able to do this. So
yeah, no problem.
So, thank you for that, and good luck with your album.
Thanks.
Which is due out, well, as we're speaking now, it's due out tomorrow, but by the time this goes out, it will be out, so whoever's listening, go listen to it. But yeah, I hope to try and pick that up on vinyl. I'm looking, I'll obviously have to wait for the sort of like European, if there's like, if 20 Buck have got a European outlet.
They distribute it through Iron Bonehead.
Okay.
In Europe, so if you go to their web store, they should have copies of it on there, I think.
Cool. That down.
Not just for you, for everybody that's listening.
Yes. Yeah,
you can buy Doomed Heavy Metal by Khemmis on Iron Bonehead.
Excellent. I'm going to definitely check that out because, like I said, I really like the artwork, and I'm a vinyl head. I've got my turntables right next to me, so they're always good to have like that sort of style of music on it as well, because it kind of really does fill the room. So.
Yeah, I'll say the album artwork looks way better on the actual release too than it does on all the digital files I've seen. I don't know what it is, like something about that sort of matte colored art style just translated like really well to the vinyl, that in a way that doesn't really pop on a computer screen. So yeah, it's worth checking out.
Cool. Well, Phil, thank you very much, mate. I'll let you get on with the rest of your day, and be well.
Thanks a lot, Barnaby.
Thank you.
You too. Thanks for having me.
No worries. Bye-bye.